angels. Welcome to Everybody Hates LA, your go-to source for celebrating the soul of Los Angeles through the stories of its hometown heroes and creative visionaries. I'm your host, Francisca, and today we're diving into the colorful world of street art. Picture this. You're walking down the streets of LA, or in my case, you're probably lost, when suddenly a burst of hot pink catches your eye. It's a sheep. This one's rocking a bold fashion sense and has a message that stops you in your tracks. You are beautiful. The artist behind this iconic pink sheep is little Ricky, a queer LA native who's on a mission to spread joy and empowerment, one wheat paste poster at a time. Ricky's alter ego has become the symbol of self-love and acceptance for the LGBTQIA+ community and beyond. But Ricky's journey to becoming the street artist he is today hasn't always been easy. Growing up, he often felt like the black sheep of his family, which I can definitely relate to. It wasn't until he discovered his passion for art that he found a way to express himself and connect with others who felt the same way. In this episode, Ricky shares his inspiring story of embracing his true self and using his art to uplift others. He talks about the surprising places his pink sheep has popped up, from the streets of LA to the walls of major corporations. Ricky also drops some wisdom on staying true to yourself, even when it feels like the world is against you. His message is simple but powerful. You are beautiful, no matter who you are or where you come from. So, whether you're a street art aficionado or just someone who could use a little extra boost, this episode is for you. Tune in to hear little Ricky's story and get inspired to embrace yourself. And remember, from one angel to another, you can find yourself in the city of stars. Let's get into it. Welcome to Everybody Hates LA.
Yes.
If you've ever walked around Melrose, Hollywood, or really anywhere in LA, you've probably seen these pink sheep everywhere. I'm so glad that I found the artist behind it. Little Ricky, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Yes.
Who are you? Tell us.
Who am I? I'm Little Ricky. I'm an artist. I was born and raised in LA, and I'm queer, which I'm proud to be queer, and I'm self-taught, and I feel lucky that I get to do this and that I found joy in my life.
Yeah.
Like real, honest, everlasting joy.
Finding joy is so hard sometimes, especially growing up in LA, right? I know you're a third culture kid, meaning that your family immigrated here from Mexico. Yes. That's really hard to be here in the school system, to be here around people, to be in a place where you may not always feel like you fit in.
Yeah.
When did you realize that you were lacking joy?
It wasn't so much that I was lacking joy. I feel like that I've been searching for joy my whole life. One of my phrases that I use in my work, and it's a symbol of mine, it's in Spanish, it's paz en el corazón. So I created this little tagline that has a word paz with a heart on it. And it's something my mom used to always say to us, that that's all she ever wanted was paz en el corazón. I didn't translate that in as meaning joy, but I always wondered about it. So I spent my whole life soul searching, like trying to find myself, who am I? And I think that going through this series and also creating this sleep ritual for many years led to this moment where joy came into my life. And it wasn't that I was lacking it, because it was that I was joy, that I am joy. And that's, to me, joy is not something you just feel. It's who we are for real. And so when I say that I'm lucky that I found it, it's what I think we all strive to have. And that's not to take away from thinking or what's the word? Experiencing moments of joy. It's knowing that all of us are that.
Yeah.
And it's finding that in you. And once I found it, that's it. It's done. There's no like, I'm going to be 70 years old. I'm like, oh, I lost my joy. No, because once I found it, it's forever.
Yeah, I am joy. I am happy. It's in the being of it. Do you think you found yourself?
Yeah, that was kind of it.
Wow.
Yeah, that was it. And I mean, I could go into this long story and I won't, but because we could be here for hours. But
I wouldn't mind.
I was literally, and I'll do a short version. In 2017, I experienced a moment of death in my sleep that had been leading on to it for many years, like many years. It took me many years to get to that moment when I experienced that. And it was kind of like a sleep paralysis that I had been inducing myself without realizing I was doing it. So I experienced that moment of death. And when I woke up that next day, I felt free. I felt like I no longer believed in heaven or hell. Everything just melted away, because at that moment I realized that I was life. I was just energy existing. I had no name. I had no body, nothing other than just energy existing, and there was awareness of it. So when I woke up that next day, I was like, what the fuck?
Did you remember it consciously?
Yeah, I still feel it. I can go back to it any night, not to that level of it, but I know what it felt like. And that's why when I say I found joy, is that I can go back to that feeling at any moment. So then a month later, I was at the gym reading a book, because I go to the book to read. I go to the gym to read books.
I do the same thing. Everyone looks at me so weird, but I love it.
So I created that I say a good bad habit.
Yeah.
And so I can't read books at home. So I was reading a book at the gym, and I literally looked up out the window, and I kept reading, and I was like, that was it. Nothing happened, but everything changed for me in my life. That moment, like, it was just there. And so, again, that's something that can't ever be taken away, that moment of when it happened. And I always like to say that nothing happened, but everything changed. And I was at ease then.
Yeah. It's almost like you found your calling. I mean, you had already been acting on your calling and acting on what brings you joy, in addition to like being that, right? But at the same time, I think people tend to be so caught up in trying to find themselves or trying to find the next thing that they forget all of the things that are around them, whether it's the people, the places, the beauty, the nature, taking a walk or something. They're so distracted with everything. Yeah. It is the moment where nothing is happening that actually changes everything for you, because that's when you fully surrender to your calling.
To who I am.
Yeah.
And, like even in that soul searching process, I spent my lifetime, my 20s, my early 30s. And then one day I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to stop this search. I go, there's nothing to find. It's just about experiencing and observing my own life. So I stopped reading every self-help book, stopped reading any podcast, not podcast, but like anything like to try to help you along the process. Like, I don't need to find it anymore. Yeah. There's nothing to find. It's just about my own observation of myself and life.
Yeah.
And that's just being... self-awareness, I guess.
Sure. And also there's nothing for you to fix.
Yeah.
That's it. It's when you fix one thing via a self-help book, then you're like, well, what's the next self-help book? What's the next thing I need to do? You're already whole. You're already complete. And even when things may not be perfect, let's say, there's nothing that is broken within you that you have to really go and seek. Yeah. You can be whole and you can just enjoy and receive everything around you.
Totally. I think that even the word perfect for me, like it happened around that time where I realized that I was, Jane Fonda once said that she was on a toxic quest for perfection. And it was on a commercial, and I kept seeing the commercial. I was like, that's me. I'm just beating myself trying to be this perfect human being that doesn't have any bad thoughts, that doesn't do anything weird. I have to be this little angel. And once I gave that up and I just started observing my life and my thoughts and everything, it just shifted. And I think doing that led me like 15 years later to get to that moment where nothing happened, but everything changed. It was letting go of that and the fixing, the trying to be perfect. So now for me, I realize that with joy, it's about even when I'm having a shitty day, I'm having shitty thoughts because it's okay. I'm like, it's okay, Ricky. Go for it. Yeah. Feel all the shitty thoughts that you want. And I still have my joy no matter what. So like it's allowing myself to be whatever I want to be and feel, and that it's okay.
Yeah, because you can separate yourself from that. I can still be a joyful person, but still experience a crappy day.
Yeah, it's because that goes back to awareness and observation. Yeah. So sometimes back in the day, I used to try to like get myself out of these little funks. I was like, okay, how do I get out of this? What do I need to do? Do I need to do something, go for a run, do this? And now it's just let it be. It's going to pass.
Yeah.
Let yourself have a shitty day for 24 hours and then you wake up and it's different, or maybe
Yeah.
it's not,
Yeah.
I actually, in 2012, I went through the hardest time in my life, and I was aware that when it started, I was like, oh shoot, this is not gonna end fast. And it lasted almost a year. And I told myself, just go through it. Like that Robert Frost quote that he says, the best way out is always through. So I was aware to have that quote in my head and just go through it. Go through whatever this darkness is. And I went through it. And a couple months later, this little sheep came into my life. And I know that I had to go through that darkness to have this. Yes.
How did the sheep come into your life?
It was just from reading a book on Alexander McQueen. And this is before the gym. So I was reading it at home before I started that ritual. And in the introduction, he referred to himself not as a black sheep, but as a pink sheep. And to me, I didn't know what I was going to do with that concept, but I was like, that's me. I'm pink. I'm queer. And I went out, I bought a toy sheep like the next day, and I started doodling, thinking like, what am I supposed to do with this concept of being different? And that was it. And I always say that it was the toy, the act of buying the toy, that was key. Because had I not bought that toy, I would never have drawn this little character out. It would have just been an idea in my head, thinking like, okay, what do I do? I had no clue that this was going to happen or what was going to come out of it. So, and somebody once told me, it's been there all along for you, Ricky. It was just waiting for you to find it.
Yeah, the universe always gives you different messages or keys or gifts or whatever, but you have to actually activate it. And I think that's why, your act of purchasing the sheep is almost like your sacrifice, right? I think people, yes, life is supposed to be easy in the sense that things that are supposed to be good are supposed to feel good, but that doesn't mean that every single moment of every single day is going to be beautiful and great, right?
Yes.
You have to still work to be good. Like if you're going to the gym and you're trying to be super active and build endurance to run a marathon, you have to practice, right?
Yeah.
And every single day you have to run a certain amount of mileage. You have to put the work in. If you want to start, eating healthier, you have to actually buy good food to then cook it and then put it into your body, right?
Yeah.
You buying that sheep to then draw it out, that was like your sacrifice, your work, your commitment, right, to the universe to say, I will pay my price. Yes, give this to me.
Yeah.
So tell us about the series. Like, what does the sheep represent? Because you as an artist, you have so much symbolism in everything that you make, but you're also putting it in a lot of very intentional places for others to see.
Yeah. I like to call them expressions of joy. That's what they are to me. And it's about, going back, it's about being different. And I realized that phrase that I used about being different, being our superpower, I just love that. I love that if we allow ourselves the ability to embrace our own being different, that then we are able to give it to other people no matter what. And me doing this series has really just opened me up even way more than I thought, where I can look at people who are different from me, whether it's socially, politically, culturally. And I'm a pretty open person, but it's just changed my brain because it reminds me like, it's okay.
Yeah.
They're okay, I always go back to, we were all little babies born at some point where we didn't have our name, we didn't know our gender, we didn't know our social class, we knew nothing. So at that moment of birth, we were all the same person. So the idea of being different always takes me back to seeing a person from that light, that you're just a little baby too, no matter what. And as far as putting them out on the street, some of them I put them in specific places, but there's a lot of mostly randomness.
Yeah.
It's like listening to the little voice in my head saying, just put it there, put it there, put it there.
I love it.
So it's not as intentional always as some people do it. I mean, a lot of artists do it very intentionally,
I mean, I love it. When I'm driving around on Melrose, is just seeing them like on a lamppost or something like that. They make me happy because they're fun and pretty and pink and beautiful.
People say that it brings them joy when they see it. I'm like, so I did my job then.
Yeah.
It's that simple. And even if they see it, no matter whether they understand it or not, that it's a feeling that you get.
Yeah.
And whether it's a piece of art that's really big or whatever I create, I want them to feel joy when they see it, whether they like the aesthetics of it or not. It's just that they can feel like, wow, there's something joyful about that.
Yeah.
And not everybody might feel it, which is okay, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting because you might even like somebody that might see it randomly might get inspired to do their own art as well, right?
Yeah.
Because they're kind of maybe closed off and imprisoned in their own thoughts or something. It might even set them free.
Yes.
And the more that they do their art, the more that you do your art, the more that it involves, the more abundance comes to you, so you can make
Yes.
even more stuff happen, right?
Yeah, and to in that case, it's also to like to think that it's about being an example.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing this as relentless as I do, I haven't stopped doing this in the last 11 years. Like
Yeah.
it's like I feel like I'm a machine just putting things out.
Wow.
I used a phrase once, like in 2020, when I drew out this one character, and it was one of my first sheep moonsters. And the sheep moonsters are different, same series, but they're whatever color they want to be. So these moonsters can be purple, green, whatever. The first character I drew was a robot, and in a little sentence I wrote, "The more I feel like a robot, the more I know I'm doing the right thing." And I wrote it and didn't think about it, and then I read it like a couple years later. I was like, wow, that's really cool. Because I'm taking the robot aspect out of it in the sense of, we're all robots just doing whatever. To me, it's more like, no, because I'm just channeling. I'm a machine just doing what I was supposed to do, like a robot. But I'm doing what I want to do. But so the more I feel like a robot, the more I'm like, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not thinking, I'm not trying to get ideas. It's just coming through like a machine. And I just think that's such a beautiful visual in my head.
It gives me like chills. And even, when we first spoke and you said, this is what I was meant to do. This is my purpose. This is my mission. This is what I'm executing. And you are the embodiment of that, whether it's your home, whether it's what you do every single day, your conversations that you're having, your family, like you found something that you can just be. And that's, and now, like nowadays, it's so courageous because most people are the opposite of that. They don't do what they want to do. They aren't who they want to be. And then they try to find their entire life to compromise whatever it is to even get close to your passions or your hobbies or something. It must be difficult to live, right? Like as an artist to really make it.
I mean, I feel a responsibility. Like I really do. This is not like a light hobby. It's not, even though I'm not financially successful yet, I feel a responsibility to show up every single day, every day, all day. And it really doesn't stop for me. Like from morning to night, it's all this. And there's never a feeling of, I know how to balance myself too. So like I could say, okay, I need a break. I go hang out with my friends or do something, but it's really nonstop. If I go on vacation, these come with me no matter what. I mean to put them out, but it's not like, I think sometimes I wonder if people think it's just a silly little thing, and it's not for me.
It's the opposite of that.
Yeah. I feel like I'm never going to see the full results of what they become once I'm gone.
Yeah.
Because I've created over like 1,000 characters between my sheep, my littles, and my moonsters. And I feel like that there's a world to be created from them. I don't have an illustration background or animation or any of that stuff. So I know that there's so much that could be done with them still.
Yeah.
And hopefully I get to see a good chunk of what happens to them.
I think you will. But even, to go back to the financial success, right? Like you're self-sufficient. Like you are, everything that you're making is still going back into your life. So I think that's really successful.
Yeah, I feel successful as an artist in my head. I feel successful because I found my little voice.
Yeah.
Like nobody else is doing what I'm doing. Nobody. Like when I started the series, and I kind of would feel a little weird about, is it good enough or whatever?
Yeah.
In my head, I thought like, I haven't, nobody else is doing this. And then once I started creating more characters, I was like, because a lot of my characters, I think of them as little drag queens, basically. And so, I'm just dressing them up. They're like little dolls to me.
Yeah.
And so I could dress them up however I want, no matter what, anything. And so when I'd have like those days where I'd question it a little bit, not like doubt.
Yeah.
I'm like, nobody else is doing drag sheep in the world. I'm the only one. And drag queens have played a huge impact in my inspiration for like the Moonsters. When I'm dressing them up, if I watch the drag queen on a TV show or at a club or somewhere, I'm like, oh, I like that outfit. I just do this and this and draw. Yeah.
So I want to go back to the beginning because you started, or you consider your artistry to have started like in what, the mid to end 90s, right?
Yes, the end of the 90s.
Self-taught.
Yes.
What did that journey look like? Because even when you taught yourself, which I want to dive into, your other series and your other art is quite different from what you're doing now. Can you walk us through that journey?
So I went to Berkeley, and I majored in English, and I started dabbling in art then. Like, I was already being creative before that, but in college I was like, well, I can't major in art. My parents that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
So, but I would take art classes, and on graduation day, my mom looked at me and she goes, why didn't you major in art? And my brain went from like, because you guys never encouraged us to do anything. My parents were very hands off. So there was never like taking us to sports, doing this, you should do that. As long as we went to school and got good grades, that's all that mattered. So there was a sort of expectation of like, you needed to do something good because you're going through a private school and your parents are paying money for this. You get to high school. My high school was more expensive than college.
Wow.
So there's this sense of like, I have to do something with my life that is okay. So with English, at least I thought like I could be a teacher. That would be acceptable to them. And I do love to write. A lot of my stuff my sheep stuff has a lot of sheepisms. So I use a lot of words with them. But so when I moved away, I think it was in 1997, I moved back to New York, and I was trying to write a book after I graduated. Didn't happen. And life had just sort of turned full circle. And I was like, okay, I need to go back home. I need to start over from scratch. I was about to turn 30. And I realized I want to be an artist. I want to paint. And coming back home, I was like the black sheep of the family. So I was the last kid that would have come back. And so my parents took me in. So it was just me and my parents.
Yeah.
I didn't have a close relationship with them. Nothing bad, just we weren't intimate. And I took them upstairs in a den that we had upstairs, and I sat them down, told them, thank you for everything you did. Thank you for the education. Not just for me, but for my 5 siblings. They put us all through private schools, paid for all of our colleges.
Wow.
These are parents who came with no education, 3rd grade, 6th grade education, and they did that for us. And so I sat them down, thanked them, and I go, I want to be an artist. And that was freedom. Because they said, as long as you're happy, that's all that matters. And that moment was like, I could say was the second biggest moment. Now, that was the biggest moment then after this Alexander McQueen, but that was for me freedom, because I no longer had to live up to an expectation of what I thought they wanted me to be or whatever they thought. None of that. Because then I just started painting and I started working in my first series that I did for 13 years. But yeah, it was that little thing, as long as you're happy. Simple, right? So simple. How could not every parent tell their kid that and mean it? Like, it was that simple, where it just gave me freedom, not just for my art, for anything. Everything.
You get to be who you want to be.
As long as I was happy.
Yeah. And even if that's different than what make them unhappy or happy or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because that conversation, I'm so grateful that it went like that, right? But for so many other people,
imagine
it doesn't.
Yeah. And for me, it's hard to even think of like what that would look like. Like, I can't even imagine. So for me, when you do hear these stories, you just feel for kids like at that age, where you're like, God, how could your parents not give you that?
Yeah.
And that's why when I do feel lucky in our family, with our family.
Theme in your life too, but having that strong support system, whether it's from your friends or your family or everybody.
Yeah.
Do you think you could do what you're doing without that?
No, not at all. Like even though I consider myself a loner, I love being alone. Like, it's my favorite thing in the world. I am social though. And so I know when to take myself out of, like, okay, you need to, you need to talk.
Yeah.
You need to talk to people. I couldn't. There's no way. Like, no way. in my, yeah, they've helped me out in so many ways that
What do
there's no
you,
way.
when you have an artist that comes to you, because I know you do a lot of mentorship as well with the other young artists who either have already started or wanted to start out, what kind of advice do you give to them? And like if they potentially don't even have a support system like that?
I don't know about the support system, but when it comes to art, I think it comes down to doing it every day, all day, as much as you can. When I was at Cal, one of our teachers, the class was really crowded, and she said, if you're not going to be an artist and paint every day, all day, I don't want you in the class. And I wasn't in that space, but I wanted to take the class. So, in my head, I'm like, yes, I do. But that word, that's stuck in my head to this day. You got to do it every day, all day. There's no you have to find ways to be creative in some ways.
Yeah.
I do a lot of 30-day challenges that I've been doing since 2010, 29. I do them for myself. It could be reading books. It could be doing yoga for 30 days. It could be writing for 30 days. It could be drawing a flower for 30 days, anything for 30 days. So you start creating these nice little routines. Like my godson, he wants to draw and stuff. I'm like, what should I draw? I'm like, draw an egg every day for 30, do something. He goes, but why? So it's about finding something, anything. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
I really don't think, I think people make excuses why not to do something. Like I could tell you tomorrow, I want you to draw an egg for 30 days, any color, whatever you want, in whatever way, that you'd be surprised what you would get from it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you're kind of speaking to me right now because I've been on my creative journey, right? I have my to-do list and every single week I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this video and I'm going to do this, whatever. And I overcomplicate everything where I'm like, oh, well, that's going to take me hours. I can't do that today. And then it's a tomorrow problem. And then tomorrow comes and then tomorrow goes. And I was looking at my to-do list this morning and I'm like, I didn't create anything this week.
Yeah.
But if I were to just make an egg, I mean, how fun just to do, and it doesn't have to have a reason. It never has to go to somebody else. I actually had a friend, Brian Hetler, if you're listening to this, who told me that, why do you create art? Are you creating it for other people? Do you create it because you want to show off and put something on social? Or do you create it for yourself? And it has to, if it's true, authentic art, it has to be for yourself and for nobody else. Otherwise, you'll never do it. You'll never be happy with it. And you'll never get out of it what you need to. And sometimes you don't get anything out of it besides I just spent 3 hours painting and that's fun too.
Yeah.
And it may not always be fun, but that's the commitment piece of it, which is another theme in your life, which everything you're doing is commitment, right? Whether it's your first series of 13 years, now your sheep series, which is 11 plus years, like everything that you're doing for a really long time. Yeah. How do you stick with it that long?
I think it's come from doing those habits that I did many years ago that sort of, I don't even remember the first one. Like right now I'm thinking of doing another one again, just for myself again.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it is, but I feel like something's there. So it's ingrained in me now. And I feel like, and it goes back to the robot.
Yeah.
Like I'm just a machine channel. I feel lucky that all this is coming through. I'm not trying to create something.
Yeah.
And I know that when I tell other artists that, they're like, wow, you're lucky that you don't have to try. This quote came to me. I don't know the exact quote, but there's another artist. His name is Donald Robertson, and he's one of my favorite artists. And he once said in an interview, he goes, listen to the voices in your head. He goes, that's where the magic is at. He goes, people always say, think outside the box. He goes, no, create your own box. It's all here. If you're really listening to it, it's all there for you to grab. Like I could have read that sentence years before and I wouldn't have caught it.
Yeah.
So it's always like, if something tells me, you need to draw an egg, Ricky, right now. I'm really good about I might even get up and okay, I need to draw the egg before I forget it. So I always tell people, any artist or not, I'm like, if something comes into your head, make sure you capture it somehow. Make sure you draw it out. I use my notes a lot on my phone just to write the idea and then go home if I don't get to whatever. It could be a phrase, anything. Capture as much as you can because it's all there. Yeah. If you're really listening to what's going on in here, it's all there already. It's just it's a matter of whether I think most of us hear it. Yeah. You're just like, okay, I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah. Or even facing the shadows, right? What if it's something that you want to make, but you don't want to go through it? And then you have to go through the process to actually make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like that goes back to like if I'm having a shitty day, just go through it because you
Yeah.
never know. Like tomorrow, something could have come out from that shitty day.
Yeah. I love that so much. I want to pivot really quick and I want to talk about your journey both in LA but also leaving LA because you've lived in quite a few other places as
Yes.
well. What was that journey like and why did you leave?
Well, I went to school in Berkeley
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to get out of LA because I hated living. At that point, I hated my parents, really my dad. And so I was like, I don't want to go to UCLA. I want to get out, far away as possible. So my other siblings had been going to Santa Clara. So they're like, Ricky's different. He's not going to fit in Santa Clara. It's a Catholic school.
Yeah, yeah.
He's going to like Berkeley. So they took me up to Berkeley. I was like, yes, this is my people. I remember seeing this bubble lady just blowing bubbles down the street. And I ended up finding out that she was a poet and she's kind of she was a celebrity on campus during that time. She's an older lady, but
Wow.
yeah, so that led me to get away from LA. I was like, okay, I need to get away. So they ended up living in San Francisco for a couple years, met my first boyfriend. And when we met him, I told him, I go, well, once I graduate, I'm leaving to New York because everybody should live in New York at some point. So when it came down for graduation, and then so I moved to New York, had the best time in New York in the 90s New York, San Francisco, New York were just wild, crazy good times.
Different than they are now.
Yeah. And then I moved back to San Francisco and I moved in with my ex, like as friends. Lived there for 2 years, had a good decade and time there in San Francisco. Then I was like, okay, I need to go back to New York and just close off whatever was there, like whatever feeling. So I didn't feel the need to have to move back there.
Yeah.
So I closed that door. I closed the San Francisco door. And then that's when it was like, it's time to come back to LA.
What was it like coming back here?
I always tell people it was weird. So when I ever ask people if how long they've lived in LA, I always tell them it took me like 2 years to get used to it. As I was telling you earlier, I don't have a car. So I love not having a car. So that was weird for me. It's just car culture and just being trapped in your car and not having connections with people on the street, on the bus, or any of that. You're just sort of stuck in a car. So when I moved here, I told myself, what do I love most about these cities, aside from the food and everything around it, was walking. So when I moved here, I told myself, walk as much as you can. I used to run a lot. I ran for like 20 years, so I was running too, but it was really walk as much as I can. So I have own cars here, but just walk.
There's something different about just seeing the houses and the people and the random alleyways and the random ways the light hits something else. It's magical.
Yeah. And as a street artist, for me, combining walking, which I consider a passion, is I get to do two things. I don't plan on ever being in a relationship again, ever, like zero.
Why not?
Because I love being alone. I'm already in my own relationship in here.
With the voices in your head.
Yeah, see? He was living with me, and when he left the last day, and I went to go sleep in my bed by myself, I was like, oh, yes. Best feeling in the world. And that started these sleep routines where I started going to bed every night because I was so happy that he was gone. Like, I love you, Ricky. I love you so much. And I started going to bed every night saying that to myself and really feeling it. And then it just evolved into this whole other routine.
Because there are people out there, right? It's the opposite problem of usually it's they're lonely and they are trying to find somebody else to fill that void that they cannot fill themselves. And I think there's some kind of transition going on right now where people are more focused on pouring into themselves and filling up their own cup and being their own person, being in a relationship with themselves, loving on themselves. Because you don't want to be dependent on another person, but two, your life is already so good. Your mission is already so good and so powerful. It would take a really special person to really partner with you to be in that, if that were to ever be the case, you know?
I always, like what came into my head right now was that when I was with my first boyfriend in the 90s, and I realized that I would tell all I had like 4 relationships, that I would always tell them that no matter what was going on, I was like, I got to take care of little Ricky, the little boy in me. No matter what, he can't die. And I just used to say that to them. And I realized that what I was doing is just taking care of myself, really honoring that little kid in us. And I think that's when it comes to even like mental health, I think of wow, I guess I was really good at it at a young age, that I just need to take care of myself, to say no to things. I don't want to do that. I
Yeah.
want to do this. I want to be at home alone, whatever. It was always making sure what I was telling them, I can't let this little boy die. I had to take care of him. I
Yeah.
needed to.
Wow.
So when I heard the phrase mental health, when we first started hearing it a lot, I was like, what is, I don't get it. I mean, I get it,
Yeah.
but it was more like, oh, because you've been
You've
doing
already
it.
been
It's
doing it.
been
It's
so
just,
ingrained
yeah.
in you to take care of you. My best friend once told me, goes, the thing I most love about you, and we've known each other for 40 years, he goes, is that when you say no, you just say no and you don't give an excuse. And I'm like, of all the things, that's what you like, is that I say no.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, because you're truthful about it. And you don't give no bullshit about, oh, I don't want to do this because I'm tired. You just say,
I think there's so much in the way that you live your life and the way that you just are that I think will give a lot of other people the permission slip internally to also be them,
yeah,
right? Because sometimes it's just about, you know what you want, you know what you desire, but you don't see other people doing it the same way, or you're just assuming that they're not doing it the same way. So seeing
yeah.
somebody like you, having somebody like you in their life gives you the freedom.
Yeah, it goes back to being an example.
Yeah.
Like when I left those high school years like that's really what I left with, is that I left with knowing I was going to do things my way,
Yeah.
not in a healthy way, not like in a stubborn
Yeah.
whatever, but
Not bulldozing.
that was at that age. I realized that I was like, I'm going to live my life on my terms, how I want. And I was 18, 19, and at that age, I knew that was going back to the example, like be the example of what it means to be yourself. Even back then, I hadn't come out or anything, but that was the start of me just being myself no matter what.
Yeah.
And to be an example as an artist, I hope that I'm an example to artists as well, to like, wow, he's really doing it.
Yeah.
Almost like, are you doing it?
Yeah.
Are you doing it? Like I could look at some of my artist friends, I'm like, you're not doing enough. Not that everybody has to be doing it to the level, but it kind of gives you a glimpse as to like how far you're showing up.
Yeah. Well, are you giving it 100% or not, right? But let me ask you this. What does enough mean to you? When does somebody not give enough?
I think it's just a feeling, like it's a feeling for me. Like I know I'm doing enough because I feel it. Like I felt that these last 11, I know that I'm doing enough for myself. Like I don't feel a sense of, wow, you haven't done enough work.
Or you're doing what you're supposed to. You're fulfilling what comes to mind
Yeah.
and what you're being called to do versus other people. Yeah, they're not.
And obviously everyone's in different places in their life and their career creatively and all that. Even me looking at this series now, I think about it and I look at my first series. I'm like, oh, they're two different things or something similar in them. But the feeling that I had with my first series, I was so attached to it that I did 12, 13 years of it. But what I feel with Sheep is completely different. But I had to do that series too to get to where I'm doing now. So it's like almost 25, 26 years,
Well, it's even sharpening your skill set and your tools and the way that you work on everything. But
sometimes things come easily to me. It comes easily because you've been doing it for so long.
Yeah. I mean, listen, that's where you have to like know your price and know your value because people will take advantage of that in other careers too, right? But I think it all kinds of comes back to the day of one, like, are you yourself? And if not, why? And only you can answer that for yourself, right? Only you can know, like, was I myself today? Was I not myself today? And I think we probably most people struggle with that probably most of their days. And then it comes into like, if I'm being a creative or I'm being something different, like when I look in the mirror, who looks back at me, right? Who's looking back at me? And
Can I share one more story? Just really quickly?
Do it.
This is because it's kind of so when I was living in San Francisco the second time around, there was I was at a bar and I was talking to a stranger, and he started painting this picture for me of a bird, and he goes, "Imagine these cliffs overlooking these magnificent cliffs overlooking this ocean." He goes, "There's these birds that get to these cliffs. Very few birds." And he looks at me and he goes, "You're one of those birds." He goes, "This is a stranger too." And I forget how we all got started on it, but And then he goes, imagine of the birds that ever get there, he goes, a few of them ever take off. And he goes, and he looks at me and he goes, you're one of those. And then he looked me in the eyes, the way I'm looking at you, and he goes, why do you keep coming back? And I was like, here's a stranger. I'm in my 20s, and I'm thinking, like, how does he know how I've lived my life? He goes, I was always willing to take risks, to go out there and do stuff, you know, to like really push myself. But I always like, okay, it's time to go back to safety. And so when I lost my job in 2019 and I hung up the phone, I picked up my brushes and kept painting as I had been all these years, like nothing had changed. And I thought of that image and I thought, I'm not coming back anymore, you know? Like, and that vision of me, that meant no plan B, nothing. This is it. You're going to just soar.
Fly.
And it's weird that a stranger left me without.
But you haven't looked back since.
Well, yeah, since I got fired in 2019. I mean, not that I wasn't, but because I was full in with sheep regardless.
Yeah.
But when I let go of my job, you know, I had it for 15 years. So now I had like, okay, how am I going to survive financially? What am I going to do? And it was just soar and don't come back.
You know, every single person that I've talked to that's been in a similar situation to that, you always make it work. The money will always come. You know, this, whatever you want to do and you follow your passion, it always works out and it's always okay.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you're okay and you're more than okay, right? I'm so glad that you have this symbol of joy. You have this symbol of hope. You're there for everybody, right?
Yeah.
To show acceptance and love and just care.
Yeah.
And that you get to be creative and like make your dreams come true in whatever ways
That's
that means.
for sure.
And you can leave and you can enjoy other things, but it's all about, you know, how you feel about yourself and also what you're able to express and reflect.
Yep.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
And we'll catch you next time on Everybody Hates LA.